buying all things. But, all of this artificial produces essentially, you get a construction and
Well, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we are looking on using Mpesa Daraja API using Django and React Native to make a real-world mobile application for both Android and iOS. In the last tutorials we did our project setup where we look extensively on how we'll be using Git to push our code to GitHub, as well as installing prerequisites such as Python 3.7 as the primary programming language, as well as Postman. So in this tutorial, we'll be looking at a sample code on how we can do everything we did in the second video, where we initiated payments using the developer portal, that is the developer.safaricom.co.ke. But now how can we dive into code, or how can we use real actual code to do the same? So the objective of this tutorial will be, first we are going to use sample code from the documentation. Then we'll install several requirements, or one requirement in this case that we need. We are going to generate consumer security, as well as now initiating the Lipa and Mpesa payment from our computers to our mobile phones, as well as doing a simple code refactor. So let me just explain this further. So to use sample code from the docs, the Safaricom website actually gives us some sample code that we can use as a baseline when you're doing various transactions, be it reversal, be it B2C, C2B, as well as in this case the Lipa and Mpesa. We're also going to install some requirements to our virtual environment, as well as generating consumer security. And remember, when we did this using the website, we had to go and to third-party websites to generate consumer security. If you remember very well, we combined our Lipa and Mpesa business shortcode, as well as passkey, as well as the timestamp. We are then going to initiate Lipa and Mpesa payment using our own Python code, as well as towards the end do a simple code refactor, and that is basically more or less cleaning up the code to make it more readable and to make it more usable in the future. So for this video, we are going to need a few things. First of all, we are going to need the consumer key and the consumer secret. If you remember correctly, we get this in the, you go to developer.safaricom.co.ke, under your apps you click the app that you are using, and it's going to give you your consumer key and your consumer secret. We need the test credentials, that is the Lipa and Mpesa business shortcode, as well as the Lipa and Mpesa online passkey. These two, you can find them in the test credentials page, and we are going to use them, if you remember, to create the password. For the consumer key and the consumer secret, we'll mainly use it to generate the access token. So also remember, when we did the transaction from the website, we used the consumer key and the consumer secret to generate the access token that went into the header parameters. We are also going to require the times to generate the timestamp automatically. Again, this will be used to generate the password. So it's the timestamp plus these two to make the password. We'll of course need the shortcode, because that's when we are going to send the money. We need an account reference, and again, account reference, remember, is the same as the account number to your business shortcode. We need the phone number, again, that is a registered Mpesa phone number. In this case, it will be your phone number that will be initiating the request, the payment. And we also need, of course, to know the amount that you're going to send. So without further ado, let's jump straight to the code. So I've opened up here the Daraja folder that we set up. So remember we had the Git folder because we set up Git. We also created the VNV, which is the virtual environment folder, and we had these 4 files. Here there's an additional folder called .vs code, and this just has the settings for the VS Code since we opened up this project in VS Code, so do not worry too much about that. So I'm going to come here and click CMD. It's going to open up the command prompt, and remember the first thing that we need to do is to activate our virtual environment. So I'm going to come and cd, that's mean go into the VNV folder /scripts. Remember this is I'm coming to this folder, and there's this, I want to activate the virtual environment, so I'm going to type activate, enter, and you can see now my virtual environment is activated because of the VNV, which is the name of the virtual environment. So then I'll go back to Daraja, and so the first thing that we need to do is to open up our code in VS Code. Just a second as that loads up. But as it loads up, I'm going to come here and open up developer portal, and I'm going to come to documentation, that is the docs. So from now henceforth we'll be using a lot of the docs because there's sample code on the right, and when it opens up you see it has a lot of things like security credentials, authentication first of all, and there's a sample code here. Make sure you select Python, and here is a sample code on how we can generate the access token. But for now we're interested, I'll come to Mpesa APIs, click on it, it will expand, and there's various APIs that we'll be doing in the course of this tutorial series, and one for example is B2C, and there's sample code on how we can do this. So we are now interested in Lipa and Mpesa Online, so I'll come to this first one. So here it has a description of what it does. So this is similar to what we had in the docs, but I mean in the APIs, but here the advantage is that we have sample code. Since I already explained what each of these mean, the business shortcode, password, timestamp, and the rest, I'm just going to come here and copy this sample code. And I'm coming here to Lipa na Mpesa, and I'm going to paste it here. So when I try to run this code, so this is how you run this code on VS Code. It's Control-Shift-P, and you can type run, and you can see run Python file in terminal. So let's first run this file. Of course it's going to throw a lot of errors. So the first error it gives us is that there's no module name request, and this is because right here we've imported requests, but we never installed anything like request in our virtual environment. So if you go back to the tutorial series, you'll find that when we initiated when we created the virtual environment, it only installed pip, wheel, and one more package. So to install a request, we use something which is called pip, and pip is a Python packaging tool. So I'll say pip install. We need to install requests. Again, this is only going to install the request inside our virtual environment folder. So if I now come to the virtual environment to lib site packages, come down, you'll find that requests has been installed. So after installing that, we are now set to go, and I'm going to come back here and now run this file again. At least now Safaricom, it goes to Safaricom, and you can see Safaricom tells me that we have an invalid access token, and of course that's correct because here it's written access token is equals to access token, but we need to generate it. So before we generate the access token, let's go ahead first and just to separate this a little bit, let's go first and fill in what we have. Right now we have the business shortcode because it's in our test credentials. We don't have the password, we don't have the timestamp, we have the amount. Let's say I want to pay 1 shilling. Party A is the phone number which we want to send. That one we have. Party B is the same as the business shortcode. Phone number is the same as party A. We have a callback URL. Again, we said this one we can guess, so I'm just going to guess and say this is the default that they've given us, but let me just say, for example, is Fullstack django.com. Again, this is something I'm just guessing. / Lipa na Mpesa. With time, we are going to actually generate an actual URL that we are going to receive some of the results. The account reference is the account number to the pay bill, so that one I can just guess. For example, maybe it can be like your ID number, so I'm just going to write, for example, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Transaction description, let's say we are paying school fees, so I'm going to say pay school fees. So going forward, I usually like to be in the habit of separating some of the sensitive information. So for example, you are going to use the business shortcode a lot. We are going to use your phone number a lot, and instead of just writing it each and every time, I'm going to come here and create a new file, a Python file. I'm going to call it for example constants, or I can call it keys. Let me just call it keys.py. Again, you can call it anything you want. And here I'm going to come and say I need the business shortcode. So come over here to your keys file, say business shortcode. I'm going to space this down. Is equals to, then go to your test credentials page. And if you want to know where your test credentials are, it's developer.safaricom.co.ke / test credentials. I have to sign in, so I'm not going to open up that one. So please go ahead and do so. Again, remember this one needs to be the Lipa na Mpesa. We also need the party A, and party A is the phone number. So I'm just going to say here party A. Or I can just write, for example, phone. You can write anything you want, and here come ahead and write your phone number. So -- and remember it needs to be in this format 254 and not 0718 and not +254. Another thing that we said from the presentation that we need is we need the consumer key and the consumer secret. So far we've already and we also need the Lipa na Mpesa online passkey to generate the password. So let's go back to the VS Code, and here I'm going to say Lipa na Mpesa passkey, and go ahead and copy the Lipa na Mpesa passkey inside those string quotations. We also said that we need the consumer key and the consumer secret, so I'm going to say consumer key. Again, go ahead and copy that inside the double quotes, and we also need the consumer secret. So of course, going forward, we need to keep this information to yourself and keep it a secret. And going forward, I'll be showing you how we can keep this information hidden from our code. So to import these ones, I'm going to come here and say from, just say import keys, and now it is going to import the entire of this folder. So that means that we can come here and replace business shortcode with keys dot what did we call it, business shortcode. I'm going to rename this, and instead of putting the capital B, and say business, this is the Pythonic way of writing things. I'm going to come back here and say is keys.that, We also have party A, which is the phone number, so I'm going to say it's keys dot phone number. Party B, it will be keys dot business shortcode. Phone number again is going to be keys dot phone number. Okay, so far so good. We are remaining with timestamp. This we need to generate it, and we also need the password, which we need to also generate. So to do so, what I like doing is that we can do it inside here. So let's go ahead and do it. So we can generate this timestamp inside this file, the same as password. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put this function here of generating the SDK push or Lipa na Mpesa into a function. So I'm going to say define, and I'm going to call it Lipa na Mpesa. It's a function. I'm going to tab this in. Okay, so this means that if we want to run this, I'll have now to come here and say Lipa na Mpesa, and I'm going to run this file, then it's going to run. But for now I'm going to hide that one. So so far we are remaining with a timestamp. So how do we generate a timestamp? So first of all, we need to import a library which comes inbuilt inside Python that deals with time, and I'm going to say import date_time. And so if we, for example, if we want to know the current date time, the current date and time right now, I'll have to come here and say print datetime dot datetime. And now if I come and run this file, it gives me required argument in position 1. Okay, so I need to say datetime dot now, and here it the IntelliSense auto-completes for me, and this one tells me it's going to construct a datetime from time.time and the local time zone. So come ahead and again run that, and you can see here it has printed for me this time. I'm just going to copy it down here. I'm going to copy it and bring it here. So when we do datetime.now, or I can simplify this and say from datetime import datetime, so that I can just say datetime.now. So it gives me this, but remember when we did from the website, it requires us to write the timestamp in terms of 2019 without the dashes. This is what we are supposed to write, or what is supposed to come in. What is supposed to come here, timestamp, is basically this without the spaces, I mean the dashes and the spaces and the semicolon. So we are supposed to have 2019 02 24 19 38 and 54 seconds 54. So we are supposed to have this. So how do we clean up the datetime.now? So I'm going to comment this one out. So I'm going to come here and say assign it to a value. So I can say, for example, unformatted time is equals to what we've just made up there, datetime.now. So if we now get the unformatted time, is going to be this. So I'm going to hide that one. And so how do we clean it up? So to find the cleaned up time, so I'm going to call it format. Again, this one you can call it wherever you want. I can say formatted time is equals to, so I'm going to call unformatted time, and there's, when I put a dot, the IntelliSense tells me there's a function here called strftime, which means string formatted time. So again, remember this one, we want it to be a string, and we want to format this to a string. So I'm going to say, call this function and formatted time dot. I call a function called the string format time. And what it does is that I'm going to put a percentage time and y, for example. So if I run this, what do you expect to happen? So out of curiosity, let's just run it. So when we run it, I need to print formatted time. Now I'm going to call it this is formatted time. Now if we run this, and to maximize the window, we get 2019. This is the formatted time. So what it does, you say percentage y. That means when you do a string format time, it's going to split this into 2019 minus the dash, then it's going to put 02 in a space, and it's going to put 19 and so on. So percentage sign, whenever we do string formatting, whether it's in date or other types of data using Python, percentage sign is telling Python that take this and formatted time, convert it to a string format time, which is like in that format with spaces. Then inside these double quotations, percentage sign is saying put here y, which is the year. Then we also want percentage sign, then we want the month, then percent. So I'm telling here put month, then put the date. Then I'm going to put format, I mean percentage sign, we need the hours, it's a capital H. Then we need the minutes, and then we need the seconds. So the reason this one is capital H and this is capital M is usually like with the year it's capital Y, month and date is usually small letters, then hours, minutes and second is capital. That's so that for example the month and the minutes, you see they are both M's. So the capital means minute, the small means is months. So now if we come and run this file again, Control Shift P and run, we are going to get this, and I'm just going to paste it here, Control V, and you can see now this is the formatted time that the timestamp we require. So I'm going to replace this with formatted time. Okay, so now another thing that is remaining is that we need the password. Okay, so how do we generate the password? If you remember correctly, I'm going to come back here. We said the password needs to be a base 64 encoded string. And if you come here, remember we were combining the Lipa and Mpesa business shortcode, then the timestamp and also the passkey. And then we are converting it or decoding it using UTF-8, and we got the result. So how do we do it? So I'm just going to come here and Google base 64 Python. Just going to click the first thing that pops up, and so for example here we have a sample code which is telling us that we need to import base 64, then encode some string. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to hide this. We don't need to print that again. I'm going to bring this to the side, and I'm going to copy here what they're saying. So I'm going to come here and say import base 64. So come up here and import base 64, and this comes already installed in Python. So what I like doing is that I like first importing things on the top that are from Python itself. Then I import things that we installed, such as requests. Then I import other files that we have generated ourselves. So I'm going to come here. We've already imported base64. Then we say encoded or an encoded string is equals to, so base64 dot, again look here that IntelliSense is filling it for us, that is base64 encode, same as here. And here we need to pass in the data to be encoded. So I'm going to come here and say data to encode. And so what is this data that we need to encode? Remember, we were adding 3 things, so it was 3 strings. The first one was the Lipa and Mpesa shortcode, which we've called here keys dot business shortcode. Remember, we've written it here. And this one we need to add it to. The reason I'm putting plus here is these are strings. So if you have in Python, if you have like A is equals to, for example, Tom, and B is equals to Jerry. So if you say A plus B, you are going to get Tom, Jerry. So, and that now behaves differently if this was like A is equals to 1, which is an integer, and A and B is equals to 2, if you add them is 3. But if you say like that, B is equals to 1 as a string, and 2 is going to give you 1, 2. Anyway, so so we need the business shortcode plus, remember we needed the Lipa and Mpesa passkey, online passkey, and then we need keys dot, we need the timestamp. Okay, so the timestamp is, I'm just going to enlarge this. So the timestamp is here, it's the formatted time, like that. Okay, I'm going to put a space here, close this. So here is saying encoded, and we need to pass in now the data to encode. And remember, this is a string, it's a string format. So now if I come on here and I say print this encoded, I'm going to call it encoded string just to make it understandable. And this is one of the beauty things with Python, is the readability. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to run this file. So the encoded string, it says it's a type error, bytes like object is required, not string. So what does this mean? It means that here we took this as a string to encode it, but the function, which now means this is a bit wrong, so let's do it ourselves. So here this says that it's expecting us to give it a bytes like object and not a string. And if you come here, we've actually given, this is a string which we've passed here. So remember, if you saw the short video that I'd given you, the way base64 works is that you take a string, you first convert it into bytes, then you encode it, then it gets decoded back to a string. So there are 2 ways in which we can do this encoding. And so I'm going to come here and say dot, if I put data to encode dot, there's a function here that says encode, and it says it's returning a formatted version of whatever we've put there, and it's going to come in terms of bytes. So we are encoding this to bytes. So if we do that, and it says here default encoding is UTF-8, and if you come here to base64, I'm just going to come here to base64 encode. So we are encoding it as UTF-8, and that is the same format that we'll use to decode. So that's one way. So if I come here and print and run this again, so we find we get these results. This is the result we get. So I'm going to come here and say that's the result we get. But if you look closely, there's something weird about it. It's returning to us a string, but it has this B. just before the string. And what that B means is that we are printing out a binary format of the data. And remember, here Safaricom wants us to put the password as a string and not as bytes data or binary data. And I mean data in bytes. So this means that we need to decode it again from this format and decode it to a string, and that's easy. So we come and say here decoded password is equals to, I'm going to call now the encoded string dot, again IntelliSense very helpful, it says decode, and it takes a few arguments self, which are not going to put it here because we are not inside a class. Encoding and errors. So, and the encoding is telling us this is encoding with which to decode the bytes, and we've just said that we are going to use UTF-8. So I'm going to say dot decode this one, and you see it's just like this is just 19 characters. Yes. So, and we are going to decode it to UTF-8. Again, for those who don't understand, there's different types of the way strings are usually encoded. We have like UTF and the ASCII. You can Google more about it. So here, if I now come and say print decoded password, we should get a much more lengthy password. Wait for it to run. And now you find here I have this password. Cool. Okay, so this means now we can pass this decoded password back to the password. Okay. Now after doing that, we're only remaining with one thing that we don't know, and that's the access token. So how do we generate the access token? Okay. If we come back to the docs here, and we go all the way up to authentication. Remember, when we did the access key, we're talking about OAuth 2.2 authentication. That is where we make Safaricom aware that whoever is sending the transaction is actually authenticated, and this is the authorized sandbox. So for this, we need the consumer key and this consumer secret, and we need this code to generate it. Remember, last time we went to a certain page on the APIs, and we ran it from there. But for this one, we are going to do it ourselves. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to paste this here. So we've already imported the requests, and now we need from request.auth import this. So I'm going to put this just below this to make it, and I'm going, yeah, like that. So we need a consumer key. Remember, our consumer key is inside keys dot consumer key, and the consumer secret is keys dot consumer secret. The API URL is that, and when we run this, we are supposed to get print_art.text. The request will come with a lot of things, and we need the text. So if we print this, we are supposed to get the consumer, the access token. So let's go ahead. First of all, I'm going to comment that out. So they're just running this. Again, don't get worried too much of this code we've left here. We are going to come back and clean it up and make it more, Pythonic, and make it more legible and organize it into various functions. But for now, I'm just going to do it in a very procedural way, so that when we do code refactors for future transactions, you can see where we are coming from. I'm going to run this. We are supposed to get errors because in my case, I've not yet filled out, invalid authentication passed. And this is because I've not yet filled this. So I'm going to I'm going to pause the video for a few seconds. Then I'm going to actually fill this out. Then I'm going to come back. Please also go ahead, pause the video, go ahead to your test credentials as well to get the business shortcode. and the Lipa and Mpesa passkey, the consumer key, and the consumer secrets under the apps tab in the developer portal. So let me go ahead and do that. So okay, I've just finished putting my relevant information in the keys.py. So now I'm going to come here and run this file, which is going to run this piece of the code. So I'm just going to come here and say Control Shift P, then run Python file in terminal, and you can see here I get okay, I've pressed twice, sorry for that, so it's run twice. So we get here this information, access token, and this is the value. So we need to extract this value to get the access token. So but here is the slight catch. When we run this, we get R, which returns to us what is called a response, and with a response you can return it in two forms, either response.text. So what we've seen here, it looks like a dictionary, but it's not actually a dictionary, it's actually a text, and it can also return it as a JSON format. So I'm going to come here, and instead of returning it as r.text, I'm going to say r.json like that, and I'm going to come and Control Shift P, and I'm going to run this again. And now I get it. I get the information in this format, which the JSON format that I get is that. And with this one, we can be able to easily extract this access token. So I'm going to come here and say first of all going to say JSON response is equals to r.json. So this one is going to return this. Just copy it. Copy this. It's going to return this, and for us to get the access token, I'll just come here and say access token. Again, you can call it whatever you want, and this is equals to JSON response, and we are going to get this is how we extract a value from a key value pair in a dictionary, and I'm going to call this again. This one you could have called it, you could have called it, for example, like my access token, doesn't matter, so that you don't confuse this one with this one. So you can call it my access token. Personally, I just, and now you can bring it to the access token which is required here. So instead of this, we replace that with my access token. Again, I like calling it just access token, so I'm just going to call it access token, which is this value which we get by extracting the value of access token, which is this, from the JSON response. I'm going to delete this one. So far so good, everything seems set. So I'm going to uncomment this one up to there, and to call this function I need to uncomment this one. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to mirror my screen, so just give me a second. So I'm going to go ahead and run this file, run Python file in terminal, and it tells me unbound local variable access token reference before assignment. Okay, let's see where we've done that error. Okay, we need that. Okay, let me try to call this my access token. Don't know if there's somewhere else where we've called access token. Okay, let me run this again. And it says success, and immediately you can see on the screen it says do you want to pay Kenya shillings 1 to Safaricom test 12 account number, that one, and enter your Mpesa pin. So remember again, the 1 shilling is what we've said here, to Safaricom test 12. So this is the name that corresponds to that. Again, remember what I said, that that will be the name of the company that you registered your pay bill with. It says account number, this is what we've just filled in, and enter Mpesa pin. So I'm going to hide my screen as I put in my Mpesa pin, and I say okay. is saying waiting for a reply, and immediately you can see that Mpesa confirm, and that and that and that, and that's my balance. So, and you can see here I even have like a legit Mpesa transaction. So again, this is a simple way, and what you need to notice that, remember, we didn't have to go to sim, open Mpesa, and go to Lipa na Mpesa. It automatically did that for us. It pre-filled the who you want to send it money to. It sends you the prompt together with the amount and the account reference, and that's one of the coolest things with Lipa na Mpesa. So going forward, we are going to come and do a code refactor of this by putting it in various functions, as well as formatting our code to be a bit more readable and into functions, and also maybe separate it into different modules or files. We are also going to see how we can do other forms of transaction, like client to business or even business to business. So I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Again, as always, if you found me for the first time, please click on the subscribe button below, and as well as hit the notification bell, because I'll be dropping the videos at sporadic times. Again, thanks so much for following my tutorial series, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.